Good evening, folks, and welcome to Here's the Deal. I'm your host, Shilo Kilber, and of course, I got my trusty co-host with me, Mr. Marvin Lepp. How are you, Marv?
Good. I thought I was just your temporary co-host. You know, Jason's going to end up taking over for me. Isn't that the way it works? He's on appearance number 2 or 3 now.
Oh,
After the third time you fire me.
Well, maybe
no, I'm doing better. I'm doing better this week than I was last week. So I'm glad that Jason was able to fill in. I hope you guys had a great show. I just wasn't feeling very good, so I do appreciate him being able to step in. But yeah.
It was a good conversation, mostly from his side. I kind of struggled last week, but we had some technical difficulties to the point where our show even it went poof.
I know, because
then I had
you both called me like, Marvin, fix this.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. So then my attention span and everything was not where it was supposed to be last week, but I do thank Jason as well and apologize to him if I made it a little difficult. But yeah, my attention span and thought process was pretty well shot after the whole show getting just off air. So
well, they don't want you talking, man. See, it's not me, it's you.
Probably. I can't disagree with that. So
I just want to get this out here before our guest joins us here tonight, Shiloh. Sure. I am tired of everybody claiming they're conservative and then spending how many thousands of dollars on flyers telling me how conservative you are. Like, we're looking at what, $1 million races this year, and I expect you to be fiscally responsible with the taxpayer dollar. and this isn't a knock to people that are actually legitimately conservative, but it's like hashtag blessed on this now. It's over the top. Everybody's vying to say who's more conservative than the next, and you start pulling up campaign finances and seeing what they're spending. It's like, good Lord.
Yeah.
You know, you look at my race with Michael. I think we spent $15,000 total for our run. Well, he already had a $120,000 war chest. So, you know, it's hard for me to believe the BS that's coming in the mail. It's even harder for me when we're getting two-sided attack campaigns that are getting blasted on the TV, on YouTube, on
you name it, social media, all of it.
Everywhere, where it's half truths and lies. Like, we're over it. I don't care. Like, I decided who I was voting for 3 months ago. And depending on how the primary goes, I can already tell you who I'm voting for in November. It's that simple, folks. Like, know your candidates, reach out to your candidates. The people that are actually willing to take a phone call from you are willing to represent you. The ones that are actually willing to show up at a debate and have a good conversation instead of name calling are there to represent you. The ones that have been showing up at your school board meetings, at your city council meetings, at your county commission meetings that aren't even elected to be there, they're the ones that are going to represent you. It's not who can send the most garbage in the mail.
To me,
that's my 2 cents. I needed to get that off my chest because I've seen so many flyers that it's ridiculous.
To me, it's not even about that. And Jason and I kind of talked about that last week. I want to know what you're going to do. What are your solutions for the problems that we have? Because we have a lot of problems. Are you going to be part of the solution, or are you going to be part of the problem?
Which is what I like about our guest tonight. Travis, before we get going here, like I just want to get a unfiltered plug in for him. Like I have watched this man fight in Bismarck for the last 4 years. He's run for office. They've come after him. They've made life uncomfortable. They've tried every way that they can to discourage him from running for office. And it's not because he needs to feel important. I promise the man would probably rather be on an ATV or out hunting or bringing trees over to my house because my wife ordered some from him than having to sit and do this every 2 years just to try and fix things. Like, but like every school board meeting, he's there because he cares. So that's my unfiltered plug for Travis here before we even bring him on, because I know once we get him going, he's got a lot to talk about. So.
Yeah, I've been watching him too, and we've been back and forth. I've tried to get him on sooner and different things, and it finally worked out for him to be on. So I'm really ecstatic that he's on tonight. So without further ado, let's bring him on, Mr. Travis Jensen. How are you, Travis?
Not too bad. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the kind words, guys. So.
Well, you and I have kind of been fighting along the same path for 4 years already. So.
Yep, and I always tell people, I've kind of looked back during this campaign, back to my 18 run, when I knew nothing about Bismarck Public School Board. I knew nothing about anything regarding the Bismarck Public School Board. I was an angry parent. So this whole thing started because my daughter was being bullied by a child that had special needs. He, was an IEP plan. And I just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't getting justice for either child. My child was coming home with black and blue marks. And I just happened to stumble upon this deal on Facebook for Bismarck Public School Board. And I thought, well, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And I signed up. Didn't know what I was getting in for. Didn't understand politics at that point. Didn't understand campaigning. And fast forward, here we are. I told a lot of people close to me, I said, I just wish some days I could walk away. But when you get into the deep of it and you start to know the ins and outs and you know what's going on, it's hard just to walk away knowing what I know.
It is. I got involved about 4 years ago now, and that was one of my deals up here, was running for the school board as well. And obviously my wife is... Am I echoing? Marvin, you're on mute. I can't hear you. Am I echoing?
Yeah, that's you.
Okay, just a second.
Are you using your fancy mic again?
Yeah, just a second.
Yeah, that's better. You have to turn up your volume, though. So anyway, Travis, you started... Do you have your mic plugged in still?
No.
Well, let's see if it's mine. Echo? Yeah, that's me. Oh, give me a second, boys.
Anyway, so to your point, Travis, I've seen a lot of the same things up here as you're seeing down there. So, but so once you seen the ad and got involved, how did you know that you wanted to continue, I guess?
Well, like I said, I didn't know anything about campaigning, didn't know anything about getting signs, didn't know anything about anything. Mm-hmm. And, I started, kind of getting some heat for it. People started bringing some heat my way, and I started facing some opposition. And my first reaction was, I'm not that invested in this. I'm just going to lay low, play it out, and let it pass. And then I thought, no, that gives them control over me, and I'm all about empowering people. And if I would have just laid down, wrote it out, that's not who I am as a person. That's not how I've done life for 40 years. Mm-hmm. So I just, I pushed on through. I started knocking on doors, started getting signs, started doing Facebook Lives. And back in 2018, that was kind of when coherent governance came about in Bismarck Public Schools. And for those that are listening that don't know what coherent governance is, it's basically how Bismarck Public Schools governs, the school district. It took more of a hands-off approach. So if a lot of people watch our city, county stuff, they'll see discussion. They'll see our commissioners, kind of having some dialogue so you can kind of understand why they're doing what they are. Well, through coherent governance, our school board members govern all through policy, and then they basically review those policies throughout the year and give instruction to the superintendent. So to me, coherent governance, it has its place, but to me, many have used it as a political shield. And it doesn't drive accountability because we don't elect the superintendent. We don't elect our building administrators. We elect our school board members. So when I, as a stakeholder, have an issue, I should be able to talk to my elected officials and get an understanding of why and hows. And instead, they defer you to the superintendent. Now, one thing I will say is we got a new superintendent last year. I firmly believe the school board made the right choice. I believe all the candidates that were, in the finals, I feel he made the right choice. He has been transparent. He has been willing to have discussions. I feel we have an opportunity this June. And I think, he's willing to talk to the public. He's made it clear that he's going to try adhering to the budget. He's going to try to be, fiscally responsible to the folks of Bismarck Public School District. But what we need school board members that are going to support that. Instead of a bunch of nodding heads, a bunch of bobbleheads that are just going to give a rubber stamp, mm-hmm. We need school board members that are going to say no, and this is why. We need some discussion. And that's how we're going to bring people back and get people more involved, is by having those discussions so that where people stand. And if you don't agree with that person should be accessible enough to where you can have a conversation with them. I've given out my phone number multiple times. I'm always accessible on Facebook. If somebody doesn't agree with me, I would appreciate a phone call. We may disagree and have to agree to disagree, but at least you got to say your side of it. You got to, you got it out there.
So where do we even begin, Travis, to fix our, it's not just Bismarck, it's everywhere. Williston's a dumpster fire. Obviously, we're learning that Harvey's a dumpster fire. Everywhere you go, it's just the public education system is in need of help. Where do we begin? Where do you begin with Bismarck Public Schools?
We begin with education. So look at the broad spectrum here and look at where, we keep hearing this term, whether it be Parks and Rec, whether it be Bismarck Public Schools, whether it be the city of Bismarck, we keep hearing this fancy term partnership, mm-hmm. which, in simple is basically we're going to take money from this taxpayer, this taxpayer funded municipality. We're going to take some from this and we're going to combine them and we're going to call it a partnership. And at the end of the day, the taxpayer is still funding it. So this doesn't sit well with a lot of people. And I understand it's probably going to lose me some votes, but I'm here to tell you, I'm going to support education first, and the sports and everything is second. I believe if you truly want your child participating in sports, that should not be on the taxpayer's back. And now people are going to say, well, Travis, there's kids that can't afford it. Well, both my kids shoot trap with MRCTL, and we take no school funding. It's all sponsorship and volunteers. So my answer to that is a lot like what we do with the shooting program. We have sponsorship opportunities for kids that can't afford the program. And I would support programs like that within our school activities so that we can give everybody an opportunity, even those that maybe can't afford it. But we need to get back to education. That is what our tax dollars are supposed to be funding, is education. Let's get the politics out of schools. I mean, just this last go around, this last year here, we had to fight to get the LGBTQ flags and all that out of our schools. We got teachers that are still hiding those flags. And if you want to do that at home, that's your business. But when we're at school, public education is to serve everybody. It's to give everybody the same opportunity to learn, the basics, and we can go on a rabbit hole with that. And, the LGBTQ stuff, we look at, look at how sex ed's being taught. Look at how some of the health stuff is being taught. The problem is everybody expects the teachers to teach their child everything. When do we drive more responsibility back to parents? When do we start pointing the finger back at parents? It seems like everybody's behind the ball when these situations occur that people are unhappy with, these hot topic items occur. We're always behind the ball. We're always trying to catch them. If people were paying attention, we would be more proactive rather than reactive. So I guess, Shilo, to wrap it up before we get too broad of a spectrum here, is education first.
I agree. And I'll just kind of piggyback off of what you just said as far as the parents. I can tell you I agree 100% with you. Some of the reason, 50%, maybe even more, is because parents haven't been involved. They're not accountable themselves, so therefore they're not going to have their kids be accountable for anything. So we can sit here and point, in my opinion, we can sit here and point the finger at the teachers to some degree, but a lot of that falls back on us too as parents in not being involved. And to your point about sports, I guarantee you, a lot of them are worried about showing up for their sports, but when it comes to school and doing the things that they need to do in school and keeping their kids accountable, it doesn't happen. And I might get some fan mail on that, but to be honest with you, I don't really care anymore. I've seen it in the daycare world here when we had the daycare here. We become the drop-off generation.
So let's bring up, so let's go back to the daycare thing. So,
sure.
I mean, you've seen it. You've seen some of the behavioral changes. You've seen it firsthand. Now let's put it in a classroom full of 25 kids, right? I mean, we keep hearing, more IEPs, more 501s. We keep hearing more behavioral issues that the school has to adapt to. Put yourself in a teacher's shoes. What do you do if you have 2 kids disrupting the entire class, taking away from 23 kids?
Yep.
How do you handle that situation and know that you're not going to lose your job?
Well, it used to be detention, wasn't it?
Well, and I want to go back to, Walker Middle School. I had a science teacher, Joel Puffy. And years ago, Joel Puffy lost his job because he physically removed a child from the classroom to take them down to the principal's office. And, I keep bringing this story up because I wasn't the best student. I wasn't pulling, 4.0s. I just simply didn't get into school. I wanted to go to shop and I wanted to go to the more hands-on classes.
Yeah.
But, Joel Puffy had this parrot named Lawrence. And, I'd sit there and I'd play with, Lawrence, kind of walk around the classroom, the tables and stuff. And, I gave him my pencil and he was chewing on it and I kind of whacked him with it. And Puffy came down on me. I mean, I had to come after school and I had to write like 100 times, I will not feed Lawrence my pencil. But, the way the guy taught and the way he got kids involved, but he also ruled his classroom, with kind of that stern, disciplined manner. And then I heard that he lost his job because he was trying to take a kid down to the principal's office. That really sits with me. And I think that we have to find that line to where teachers know we have their back, but they also know our expectations as parents. And that's where I think, this board and going back, previous boards have failed because they've created a divide. It's stakeholders versus school, school personnel, when really we should be kind of bringing it together, because my job as a parent is to send productive, respectful kids to school. Their job as a school is to educate. And we want to keep that circle coming back around. I don't want my kid coming home telling me all this craziness that occurred throughout the school. But for parents to realize that and to realize how important that is, we have to allow them in our schools. And, people go back and kind of watch my talking points throughout my campaigns. This is my third one, as we mentioned. I've changed. I've evolved. And one thing that really opened my eyes was we had it's called the Watchdog Program, and we had it when my son was in elementary school, where it is to promote positive role models, male role models, to come to the school and be active. Because as we know, in today's society, a lot of kids don't maybe have two-parent households. And this program, it was a national program to just kind of introduce some of them positive role models to come into schools and engage with the kids in various ways. There was a background check, so everything was on the up and up from a safety aspect. But I spent the entire day at the school, and I'll be honest with you guys, I walked into that school that morning and I thought I knew how it was all going to go. I had this predetermined mindset, and when I walked out that day, I wanted to go back to my regular job, but it reinforced to me how important my job as a parent was. And I wish everybody could kind of experience that. It's a lot like, let's go back to the sports thing. I always say, if we get people as involved in their child's education as they are in the sports, the booster clubs, all of that, we would be winning. We wouldn't have all the propaganda about test scores and this and that. Let's talk about test scores. So you talk to people and ask them if they actually understand what these test scores mean. If you rewind about 4 meetings ago, BPS actually talked about the difference between the ACT scores and then what we're going to now is the North Dakota standards. And I thought they kind of, it was really quick if you kind of listen for it, but they basically said that if we go to North Dakota standards through all of North Dakota schools, Bismarck is actually going to set the average, because 9 out of every 10 kids is basically going to be a BPS student.
Mm-hmm.
So we start talking about test scores, right? And we're using those as a way of measuring how successful our public education system is. I can sit here and tell you guys, I don't take tests very well. So while I support using that as an avenue to gauge how well we are doing, I think people have to realize there's a lot more to it than just looking at a test score. Because I know a lot of blue collar working class folks that aren't necessarily going to do well on tests, but you put a problem in front of them and let them use their hands and let them use a little common sense, they're going to do well. And I think you both know people like that too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even if you look at real quick before we get off this North Dakota standards thing, they still have to fix half the century code for scholarships by removing the ACTs and stuff, because last time I checked, your college scholarships that you can get from the state of North Dakota are based on your ACT results, aren't they?
Yep.
So
some of them are.
All these kids are going to be sitting and filing for grants and stuff, thinking that their North Dakota standards test is perfectly fine. And we still haven't fixed the law that issues the scholarships. I've been kind of on that for a couple of years already, ever since Baszler announced that they were lowering the GPAs for scholarships, and they were doing this and they were doing that, and it's like, why are we dropping it from, I think it was like a 3.6 down to less than 3 for scholarships? And it's because they know that they've already burned some bridges and they need to fix stuff. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, but it's and I get where you're at. Like when it comes to ACTs and SATs, those suck to study for. I was so burnt out when I got done with my ACTs in high school, and this was years ago, that I didn't bother studying for the SAT, and I still did fine. But why do you have to sit and deal with all this stuff? What?
Nothing.
What'd you say?
It said back in 1900.
Yeah, you watch it. Anyway, Shiloh's not good at math. Obviously, we know what his start point is.
Shoot.
But no, I get you. But sorry to interrupt that little kind of 2-cent blurb. When it comes to parent involvement, kind of like I understand where you're at with the sports and education first, because I mean, you look at these band kids. I mean, how many fundraisers and fund drives and everything else do they have to do in order to get any sort of financing for their music programs, which are always the first thing to be cut? But we can sure find a reason to build a $5 million skating rink, can't we?
Or
well, let's talk about band night. Now that we're talking about music. So band night is intended to celebrate, the kids, their achievements, to kind of highlight some of that to the community. And this year, a lot of people asked why I didn't participate in band night. I haven't participated in band night all 3 of my campaigns because I've either been there supporting my kids and watching them, or this year I had an opportunity to I was in the parade. Many people don't know that, but I was in the parade. I was actually driving the United Sound pickup with their float. And for the viewers that don't know what United Sound is, it's actually a orchestra program that my youngest participates in, where they get the kids that are disabled, and they get them involved in orchestra. And I'll be honest with you guys, I've got really involved in this program, and we talk about the inclusion word as being bad. Everybody wants to label inclusion when we say it as a bad thing, but I watch how these students interact with each other through this program, and that is the intended point of inclusion. But unfortunately, we've let certain parties pervert that to kind of fit their own agenda. So I would encourage everybody to kind of check that program out and check some of the good programs that we do have in our schools. Because I tell you what, after I got done driving that float for them kids, I felt really good. And I think I felt a lot better than if I would have been on handing out candy, promoting myself, because the whole intent of that parade is to highlight
the kids,
our students, and their achievements. And we've let politicians infiltrate that. I mean, if we want to do something to promote politicians, we have meet and greets, we have debates. Let's go down that rabbit hole, guys. So there was supposed to be a debate with all the school board candidates. I was game. I mean, Marv knows I like to talk. I'm a talker.
That's why I'm just
anybody that's met me knows I'm a talker. I was excited. I was excited to have a debate because there's some things that I would like to call out. And both the other candidates, both incumbents, apparently couldn't make a debate work with their schedule. They tried to make 2 dates. Neither date could apparently be made by both, so they canceled it. I feel that was a disservice to the voters. I really do. You can
halftime at a basketball game.
Yeah. Or let's talk about public comment, right?
Yeah.
So you rewind 2 years with BPS, and they had Brad Miller get up. They used Robert's Rule of Order to relinquish people's time to him so he could speak. The next meeting, they laid the gavel down and they changed public comment. Look at planning and zoning, Bismarck, Burleigh County Planning and Zoning. Look at City of Bismarck. Look at Burleigh County. You can always get up there and speak. Bismarck Public Schools, no. Even if it's an agenda item, they try to kind of silence you. But yet then we say in the same voice that we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to get people involved.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways. Let people have their say, even if it opposes the board. Let them have their say. Let them be involved. I just don't get it. We keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. Look at the budget. This upcoming budget's going to be nasty for Bismarck Public Schools. ESSER funds, from the COVID time have ran out. We didn't budget replacement dollars for those funds. So just a couple weeks ago here, we let 3 nurses go. And who let them go? The superintendent. Really, that falls on our school board members. This next budget, we're $1.1 million short. Where's that money going to come from? That's the question that should be being talked about now, is where's it going to come from? How much more staff are we going to let go? I think we're at 62 employees thus far this year that have resigned. Why are we hearing about that? We hear about school visits. One of my biggest irritations is you watch a Bismarck Public School Board meeting, and it's a lot of this. I can tell you, I didn't run for this position to be in the limelight. I didn't run for this position to benefit personally. I really struggled with running this go around because people ask me, why did you choose to run? Both my kids finished the year with a 4.0. They both do really well in public education. And I tell people it's because from 2018 to now, I've seen that there's a lot of kids and families in Bismarck that don't have a voice. We have a high number of Title I schools. We got a lot of talk about free public lunches, right? That really tugs at people's heartstrings, that kids have to, or parents have to pay for public lunch. But what a lot of those people don't understand through the emotion is public lunch is how we get our Title I funding. That's the unit of measurement for Title I funding. So if we start paying for public lunches at public schools, now we have to come up with a different unit of measurement to figure out where the Title I funding needs to go. So there's a lot of emotion that comes into this, the school stuff. And I really urge people just to step back, read the policy, watch the meetings, gain an understanding. And I would hope that we could eventually get enough elected officials, school board members, to where hopefully, we could have some more community forums. So this year they introduced they took our public comment away. They introduced the concept of community forums. I purposely stayed away from the first 2 because it seems like when I show up, there's always conflict between me and the current board members. And I didn't want to take away from the intended purpose to the people that came and, they wanted to be involved. But I did go to the 3rd one. I tell you what, I left feeling like there was some accomplishment because we had educators, we had parents, and we had just average community members. And the communication between the entire group was so positive. There wasn't yelling. There wasn't talking down to. It was open, two-way dialogue. And we had a teacher, she was talking about burnout and about what she's doing at her school to, kind of lift up, her fellow coworkers. And I go through the resignations every school board meeting. I kind of watch them and see, which schools, is there a trend? And really, folks, we should be concerned because we're losing some great teachers this year, whether it be in special ed, whether it be in some of our arts. We're losing some great people. And I would really like to hear our local board talking more about why. Burgum's administration with Basler has supposedly launched this initiative to find out why. But then they say they drive it back to local boards. And I haven't heard anything at our school board meetings about why we're losing educators at the pace that we are, because there's just not, the answers aren't being given to the public. But again, I don't think a lot of people look into the big picture unless it's a teacher that their child values. that they don't dig any further.
So,
You know,
so that brings up a good point too. Like I saw it up in Max. I actually have FOIA I've requested, but they have the where it's the teacher's aid, where you can go through school and they'll pay for your school as long as you're working for a school district. But like they let go of one of their tutor aides up there, saying that they were out of ESSER funds. And I mean, we've seen that at other schools too. But you look at Bismarck, right? You said we're what, 1,000,017 short?
1-7 short. Yep.
Okay. So as a school board member, would you have voted to approve Silver Ranch and Elkhorn?
I would not have.
Or
I
would
would
you
not
have
have.
that money spent towards fixing the schools we already had?
Yes, a lot of people know me. So a little bit of background personally, besides politics, is I hunt and fish a lot, folks, and a lot of people know I got a lot of old iron. I started out with a lot of old stuff. I fix it, I repurpose it. I would take the same stance on the school board. I still drive an old 2005 Chevy. I mean, it's rusted out. It's on second motor, but it's bought and paid for. I don't owe the bank. And I think that's how we have to start looking at these budgets is we need to quit stretching ourselves so far. We have to start putting away so there is money for some of these problems. But I wouldn't have built 2 new schools, and I don't think the need is there. And I really struggle with why are we putting 2 elementary schools up, but we haven't seen any discussion of middle school or high school. If there's such an influx of elementary school kids coming into the system, why are we not hearing about plans to build further? And for those that have watched the Bismarck Public School Boards, one thing I find really frustrating is how they show the numbers. So if you watch when they display the graphs of where we are for population per school, it's all colored and it's all mumbled and jumbled. Why can't we have just a nice, clean chart up on that screen so people can actually follow along and go line by line? And I think it's intentional, because if you go back and you watch it, they always use the phrase, well, we have kids coming and going, so the numbers are going to change. We have to look at where society's trending. And one thing as a board member I would consider is our next generation, they are not having kids at the same age that we did. They're not getting married, in those younger years. They're not buying homes as quickly. They're okay renting. They're wanting to focus on careers. They're just not doing things the way we used to do things, and we have to be able to change with those societal trends. So building schools, anticipating this huge influx of kids, I just don't see it. And I personally, I'm a huge fan of neighborhood schools. And I think we need to start investing in our neighborhood schools and go back to the staff thing. We don't even have enough staff to fill all of our schools. Let's talk about legacy. So for those that don't know, our high schools actually have 2 different schedules. BHS, CHS, they go on your traditional schedule. Legacy goes on what they call flex mod. And I've questioned this over the last 4 years, and I've been told it's a pilot program. Well, how long do you run a pilot program before you review it and make a decision? So flex mod is where the kids basically kind of stagger their schedule. They can kind of personalize their schedule, is I guess the simplest way to explain it. But they went to that because Legacy was never built to hold all the kids that it did. So if they could kind of stagger when those kids were in the school, that worked to their benefit. And that's why we had to do the addition to Legacy, because it was never built to hold all the kids that it was intended to. And that's, again, our school board should have been transparent about that when it was built. But instead, they went back and they found another reason to build. We should ask why the building keeps happening. Who does the building really benefit. We have elementary schools right now that are sitting at 50% capacity. I mean, sure, they're being repurposed for more BSEP programs and stuff, but if we have schools that are sitting below capacity, do we really need 2 schools? I would say no.
I mean, really, the new schools are just following the housing developments, aren't they?
Well, and ask where they're being built. Are they being built in established neighborhoods, or are we building them out in the middle of horse pastures? So the taxpayers.
And one of them's right down the road from Sunrise, isn't it?
Like it is. It's yep. You start drawing circles, and they're right on top of each other. But the school went up first. The houses didn't go up first. The school went up first. So, of course, when we build a school, we got to have a paved road. We got to have power. We got to have water. Got to have sewer. Who paid for that?
Well, and that goes back to what, $1.7 million shortfall.
And to me, like I said, look at how we're building these new schools. Are we building them for safety, longevity, and to be taught in, or are we focusing more on aesthetics? Go back and look at legacy and ask, look at all of our high schools and ask yourself which one is the most unsafe if we would have an active shooter situation. We have glass walls. We have big open doorways. They are not building schools like they used to. They are building them for aesthetics. That's a social trend. But as elected officials, you can't always follow the social trend. You have to kind of, you have to make decisions sometime that will be unpopular. And I tell you what, I would rather have an ugly school that is built to last than this big palace. Because ultimately, I went to Moses, Wachter, and BHS, and those schools weren't glamorous, but I still got the same education. I still learned. So
I went to Miller, Simley, and then Bismarck High before we moved back to the farm in Hazen. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
And Bismarck High is still teaching kids to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I'd rather see.
And parking still sucks.
It always has.
What's that?
I said, and parking still sucks.
Yeah.
Well, and they took a lot of parking away when they built that auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
Lost a lot of parking in the back there.
I've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm all about repurposing. I think we really have to start looking at, here's what we need to get back to. Before we build these new schools, they've been using the general fund to fund them. And if you watch the numbers, the general fund is being depleted because they use the general fund. They don't have to bond it, and they don't have to ask the taxpayers. So to me, it's a way of, it's a workaround.
Yeah.
And I think we really have to start asking the people, what do they want?
Well, I can tell you this. I don't want the $1,000+ I spend a year in property tax for not being able to ask these questions as to why we're building schools when we have ones that we're shutting down.
Well, let's talk property tax because I've been a little vocal about that. I did sign the petition, and I signed the petition because I feel that it should be the people's right to have a say. But I want people to think, is this measure, is it a fix-all? Or is it a Band-Aid? And why I say that is we've seen term limits and what happened with that.
Yeah.
These elected officials never want to deal with what the people hand them. Remember when, I remember when I was young, I'd go mow grass and I'd get an allowance, right?
Yep. I
had to work with what I had earned. I mean, my parents didn't give me a credit card and say, here, just swipe it and, have free reign. I had to work with what I had. And I think really, I agree with the property tax initiative or the measure, but I really think we have to start electing people that are going to be fiscally conservative, that are going to be responsible to the people. And that to me is a long-term fix. I think this is a move in the right direction, but I really think that who we have making these decisions is going to dictate quite a bit.
I don't know what to say anymore when it comes to school boards. Like, I'm glad you show up for these meetings because I was exhausted with our previous superintendent, where the school board was literally just figureheads and he was calling the shots, right down to working with Bismarck Burley Public Health for everything and going hand in hand with everything that came tumbling out of Renee Mock's mouth. And that's where my frustration was. I mean, I was there at the meeting with Brad Miller where he, do you have to have a beard to be on the show? No, you don't. Or Shilo will send you a link. But like, I was excited when they brought in the gentleman from Mandan because Mandan was looking at opening up right away, coming back into the fall of 2020. He seemed to have a good head on his shoulders. It seemed like it was going to be a good fit. But where my biggest frustration currently is we look at our current superintendent of public instruction, we look at these school boards, and anytime something goes wrong, everybody just points at each other and go, well, they need to answer for this. And so, like, that's what I've always liked about you is like, no, I'm going to look into this. We're going to find out how we can fix this. We're going to see what I can actually do, you know? And yeah, I mean, you've been consistent every time you've run.
And Jeff has been great. You know, Dr. Fosnotch. So, you know, the people that have followed me for a while know that I attended all the public interviews for this last superintendent search, and I recorded all of them. I went Facebook Live, and I documented them. Everybody said, why did you do that? And I told the current superintendent the reason I did it was because when, you know, if he loses his way or if he forgets what he sold us on when he ran for the position, you know, I can gladly send it to him and remind him what he promised us. And one thing that stuck out with me about the current superintendent when he ran for or when he applied for the position was he talked about unity. And he talked about giving all stakeholders, you know, a say in hearing people out. And I feel he's done that. So let's go back to when we heard about the Horizon wedding. You know, there was supposedly a wedding that happened at Horizon Middle School. A lot of people were up in arms. And we weren't getting answers because in BPS policy, it gives the superintendent 60 days to investigate. Well, a lot of people know 60 days, a lot can change, a lot gets forgotten. You just imagine if our local law enforcement would take 60 days to get a investigation rolling.
Yeah.
That could be scary. But anyways, I stood out in the corner with a sign, and it talked about the Horizon wedding, and I basically said I wanted answers. And Dr. Hornbacher, instead of coming out and saying, Travis, let's come inside, let's have a conversation, he let me sit out there for 4 hours holding the sign as traffic drove by. I can tell you, Dr. Jeff Fosnotch, he has reached out and said, Travis, if you don't understand something, if you need answers, come in, let's sit down and have a conversation. Mr. Steve Kuntz, he's our public relations director at BPS. Another asset that he's always willing to take an email. He's always willing to take a phone call. And if he doesn't have the answers, he'll get you the answers. And that's the kind of people we need in our leadership roles within our public school system, is not somebody who's going to just tell you what you want to hear, but somebody that's going to say, here's the policy, here's what it reads, here's how we do it, and then put the power back into people's hands. And if you don't like it, give them the opportunity to change it. You know, I don't have all the answers, but I can tell you since 2018, I've met some great people. And I've met some people that if I don't have the answer, I can reach out and get clarification. I can reach out and get an opinion, because at the end of the day, we're supposed to be public servants. We're supposed to serve the people. But if you're not talking to the people, or you're picking and choosing which groups that you let be involved, we're picking winners and losers at that point. As many know, I was involved in the BPS audit I stood up at Department of Transportation many days getting signatures. And one thing I took away from that experience was talking with the people. Because you had everybody filtering into that building. And a lot of them people, I probably would have stopped on the street and just had a conversation with. But when I had to ask them to sign that petition and I had to give them reasons why I was asking them to sign that petition, it opened up a lot of dialogue. I got a lot of input. They heard my input. And I'll be honest with you guys, that audit petition, it didn't matter if you were a conservative. It didn't matter if you were a liberal. It didn't matter if you didn't know nothing about nothing. It was talking about finances. It was talking about taxes. It was talking about holding elected officials accountable. And that united everybody to where it didn't matter what side you were on, you had an investment. And that's what I'd like to see us get back to with public education is it doesn't matter if you got an R or a D by your name or what side you align with. We all have an investment in public education. And let's touch on homeschool.
Yep.
So I keep hearing a lot about, well, if you don't like it, pull your kids and homeschool. I support homeschooling 100%. If you have the resources and the means to homeschool and it works for you, I support you 100% because the homeschoolers still work with the school district. There is some communication. Unfortunately, the majority of our community cannot homeschool. So to me, that is not a viable solution for most of our community. So for people just to throw it out there and say, well, pull your kids. What do you tell that single mom working 3 jobs trying to get by to homeschool? What do you tell her? I don't want to put too much on the other candidates, but I was at the last public forum and Dan Eastgate was the school board member in attendance. And one thing I've really been advocating this election cycle, this campaign, is equality. A lot of people know that not every school does everything the same way. Not every school has the same opportunities. We're Bismarck Public Schools. It shouldn't matter whether you attend a school down south or up north. Those children should have the same opportunities. But what our school board does, what our superintendent does, is they drive the accountability back to the building administrator. And they let the building administrator make the choices for their building. So again, we kind of get back to that kick the can mentality. But yet, public education, if you read what their mission statement and stuff is to help every child thrive, don't you have to offer the same opportunities so that every child has the same opportunity to thrive? So I really struggle with that. And Dan Eastgate made the comment. He said, well, people buy houses in certain neighborhoods so they can attend certain schools. Well, that's something that I would expect from a realtor. I'm not going to tell you that. If somebody calls me and asks me why their child isn't getting this opportunity that's happening at this school, I tell you what, as a school board member, I'm going to look into it because it shouldn't matter what part of town you reside in. You should be afforded the same opportunities and the same education. And that's, again, I'd like to see it streamlined because many of our educators correspond with each other. So if we streamline the curriculum, it's going to make it easier for our educators, especially the new ones coming in, to maybe converse with other teachers to better get a footing to better teach that class. So,
well, and it would be nice. I know it'll never happen, but to see Bismarck and Mandan kind of mirroring each other too when it comes to curriculum, stuff like that. That double standard's been there forever. Even from when I was in high school in the 90s, VHS had one set of standards, St. Mary's had another set of standards, Century had another set of standards. And depending on where you lived, you would get looked down on depending on what school you went to.
Yep.
And
I remember that.
you know. But like legacy was so rushed from the get-go. And I can say this because my oldest daughter would have been the first graduating class from Legacy. And that first year, the freshmen, when they were busting them up to BSC, Simley, and then back to Simley after they got done with school today so that they could get to where they needed to go, like it turned into such a fiasco within, I think, 2 weeks. We pulled her from going to Legacy and sent her to BHS. And it was a half gone through plan as far as I was concerned, and it always has felt that way. And I know I have a lot of friends that have kids that go through Legacy. Like, I get it. It's nice. It's the new school. It's in that zoning area. But from somebody that watched it from the beginning to now, it's always been a half-thought plan, it seems. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, Travis, but that's the way it feels to me.
Well, I would agree with it, and I guess it goes back to our school board being able to maybe admit some wrong. And that's one thing I really see as a trend with our board members is we always say that we want parents and we want leaders to emulate the same behavior that we expect from our kids. Well, I think as pretty common sense fellers, we know that sometimes you got to look in the mirror and say, maybe did I go down the wrong path or did I make the wrong decision? And it's not a time to beat people up or to beat yourself up, but it's a time to reflect. And to me, I feel reflection's a great thing, and I feel we lack it on our school board. Instead, they try to push it under the rug. They try to deflect it instead of saying, no, maybe we made the wrong decision. How can we fix it? That's what I want to see more of is, because like I said, that flex model learning that you're talking about, that's legacy. I've been told it's a pilot program. It's probably one of the longest running pilot programs we've ever seen. How long does the pilot program actually last? If it's such a great program, why are we not utilizing it at BHS and CHS? Same with our dual credit courses. Legacy has the highest amount of dual credit courses. So we talk about kids graduating college before they graduate high school. For one, it's a great cost savings to our families, because if the child wants to put the extra work in, they can get college done at a pretty good rate. But why aren't we offering the same courses at every high school to every student? Let's go back to the COVID days. Maybe one good thing that came out of COVID was we learned about all this virtual stuff. Why can't a student that attends CHS do the course virtually while doing some classroom so that they can still get that credit? Because part of the dual credit thing is the teacher has to have certain credentials to be able to teach that course at the high school level. So, there's some staff at this school that can teach this, or some staff at that school that can teach that. So why don't we utilize some of those things we learned during COVID so that we can help our students better succeed at the college level? Like I said, Legacy has the most dual credit courses compared to BHS and CHS, and I just really question why, when we have the resources to make sure that every kid can really, do what they want so that they are ready for college. Or if I'm a huge advocate of the career learning. I see a lot of it. I've always been a blue collar worker, and I see a lot of kids and a lot of openings in those career paths that aren't being filled. So again, I would like to, we just have to start tailoring learning in a different way. It's like we get stuck in this rut and we stay there, not being able to reflect and say, hey, maybe that was the wrong way. Let's retailor it. Let's address it and move in a different direction.
Well, and I guess go ahead, Shilo.
I was going to take it another direction. Go ahead, Marvin. Finish your comment.
Well, and my thing is like we've seen over the years how each generation's evolved, And the style of learning's changed, the access to information's changed, like even from my oldest daughter to my youngest daughter, it's changed night and day. And it continues to change and continues to fluctuate and it continues to grow. So again, back to the equal opportunities, I mean, being able to carry a uniform offering to all students, no matter what school they're at, like the early college credits or the flex learning, like that's something that needs to be evaluated. And I think we need to stop with so much outside influence because we have a lot of great educators here in North Dakota, but we're too busy looking at national scale and national standards. What I have liked about working with you, Travis, is like, what was that, 2 weeks ago? I sent the graduation standards to you according to Century Code, and I'm like, what does this section mean? And you're like, I will find out. I will reach out. And you had an answer back to me in less than 5 hours. And clarifying that in that particular section of Century Code, which was social studies, which was the US government and stuff, versus that was line A versus line B, which was problems of diplomacy. You're like, Bismarck uses this as their standard of what you need to meet requirement. And so it was nice that even though you didn't know the answer, you're like, I will find out and I will get back to you. So that's something that we should see with any of our elected officials.
So I was going to take it another direction here. I know earlier you talked about teachers and how we're losing our teachers. In your opinion, or in your thought process, why are we losing our teachers, and what can we do about it?
Well, a lot of our leadership's going to tell you that it's economic. They're going to blame the cost of daycare. They're going to blame the so-called lack of pay. I really think it's burnout. I think these people are being pulled in so many different directions that it gets tiresome. I mean, just imagine years ago, teachers taught. I mean, I can tell you when I was in elementary school, if I got sent to the principal's office, I wasn't afraid of what the school was going to do to me. I was afraid of when I got home, getting my ass paddled. Nowadays, and I think a lot of people can agree as parents, that's kind of been taken away because they've made it to where you have to take this passive approach as a parent. And we see it, we see kids on their phones, on, gaming. And I feel these teachers are having to wear so many hats. Whether they're not only teaching no more, they're supposed to be a social worker, they're supposed to be a shoulder to cry on, they're supposed to know this and that and this and that. It has to be tiresome. And that's why I really back the mentoring programs. I mean, ask yourself, when I went to school, we had Grandparents' Day, we had muffins for mom, donuts for dad. My mom would come, we had a teacher that my mom didn't agree with in elementary school. My mom was allowed to come and sit in the classroom and observe. We actually have a policy at Bismarck Public Schools that if you're a parent and you want to be approved to come to the classroom, it specifically says, don't quote me word for word on this, I don't have it in front of me right now, but if you are there to critique and basically form an opinion, that you're not allowed in the classroom. I posted it several times on my Facebook page, guys. I'll be honest with you, when we come to that OE, if I'm a board member, we are going to address that language because I think we have some great staff that are not afraid if a parent comes and sits in their classroom and sees the great work that they're doing. If you have something to hide and you're afraid of a parent coming in your classroom, that to me is a red flag. Now, let's back up. If you're going to come to a classroom, we have to be respectful. Respect goes both ways. We have to do it in a respectful manner. And I feel that our school board has made it us versus them, like I said before. And I feel that's detrimental to a lot of our staff because we see politics being brought into our schools. And for teachers that just want to teach, now they're being lumped into this group or that group. And all they want to simply, ask yourself, talk to a lot of educators and ask them why they do their job. They don't do it because they're making millions of dollars. They're doing it because they have a passion. People think these teachers make this huge amount of money. This last year, they got a 4% pay increase, folks. Our average teacher at BPS makes $54,000 to $58,000 a year. You take that by the number of educators, which is roughly 2,000 staff members. You take 4%. They got probably a $3,800 a year increase. As most of us know, with the economy right now, $3,800 isn't nothing. We used to be able to go to Walmart for $100 a pay period. Now you're looking at $200 to $250 or what have you. So $3,800 isn't that much. So it's not for the pay. I do feel a lot of the good educators are in it for the passion because they want to see the kids succeed. And let's rewind a little bit. So I went to Walker Middle School, and Dr. Jason Hornbacher was actually a science teacher when I was in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. I remember him, and he was very passionate. There was a time where they had kind of a rivalry between the teams, and if we did so well on a test or something, all the science teachers were going to camp on top of the roof of the school. And it was Mr. McDonald, Mr. Puffy, and Mr. Hornbacher. So we should really ask ourselves before we throw Jason under the bus and back it over him, what changed? What changed from the time he was an educator to the time he became superintendent? I'd personally like to evaluate that, but because there was no line of communication, it was really hard to understand. But where did the shift occur? Because leadership either makes people succeed or they drive people away. So I'd really like to evaluate leadership. And I think, again, that involves people looking in the mirror. Instead of pointing the finger, we got to look in the mirror and ask, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing right by the people under us? And as a school board member, ultimately, you have the final say. So you have to do your research. You have to find that understanding. And like I said with Jason, I had a pretty good communication with Dr. Hornbacher when he first became superintendent. And then slowly that faded because it was a constant battle. It wore on both of us. I feel Dr. Fosnotch, just from a leadership role and from talking to educators, I really feel that the tides are shifting in Bismarck Public Schools, but we need leadership that's going to support him because he has proposed some out of the box thinking. Like, they actually have 3 committees now. The excellence committee, there's an academic committee, there's another one. But basically, it's stakeholders that come together and basically give input on those 3 items. We've never heard of that before. So I really think that we have to look outside the box and figure out, why are the educators leaving?
Well,
has anybody asked them?
I have a couple thoughts on that, but quick back to Hornbacher. Like, I wish the man that I had conversations with privately was the man that was sitting in those board meetings. So at one of the school board meetings that I had shown up to, I'd given a speech. I gave it to all the school board members afterwards. And Jason actually went out of it. And keep in mind, my kid had already been graduated for a couple of years. My oldest daughter had been graduated for a couple of years. He went out of his way to find my phone number and call me. And we had a 45-minute conversation about the state of everything. And like he was very passionate about it, but again, it turned very combative. One question I have coming back to educators and losing them now, are we just giving them all raises, but we're not actually taking into account what we're hiring on new teachers at? Because people talk. I mean, y'all know what your coworkers make. You do. You know, it's taboo to talk about it. But how about these teachers that have been there for 5-10 years where their starting salary was 36,000? Now with their 4% increases, they're up to 56 or whatever, and all of a sudden they're hiring in new teachers at $56,000. I mean, I've had reports up in the Williston area that educators are up to $80,000. I mean, you think about it, you bring in new hires for what somebody's already making that's been there for 10 years, it's going to piss people off too. And I don't know where that standard lies or if there's any sort of way we can look at that transparency.
Well, I guess I can't give you a direct answer on that just because all of the bargaining, being as they are a union, is done in executive session. But one thing we can touch on is when a new hire is hired on, if you look under the consent agenda, all those hire on wages are posted. It is public information, but I can't really tell you how we do it, Marv, because like I said, all those negotiations, because they are union and they do collective bargaining, that's executive session. So again, that'd be a question for the union. And I really think that as teachers, whether you are a union member or not, the union is bargaining on your behalf. So I would like to be a fly on the wall in one of those meetings and just kind of see, is our teachers union representing the entire district as a whole, or is it kind of being politicized like a lot of things in life these days? But you're right. I would, before I left, one of the major manufacturers in town here, they had turned union, and that was kind of one of the big discussion points was how are new hires going to be treated versus the people that have 20 years of skills. So you're right. We have to me, I think we need to dig into it deeper than what we are. That would be, I guess, my solution to the whole retention issue is until I'm given all the information, it's really hard to form a solid opinion.
Well, and I think some of the reason too is kind of what you touched on, because I've asked some of the teachers around here, and obviously in the Williston area, we've been very active over there as well. And to your point, they're having to wear so many hats, like they can't really hold their students accountable. I mean, you even just talked about a teacher that you had that lost his job because he tried to take him down to the principal's office. You can't tell a kid not to use their phone. You talk to the parents and it's just like it goes in one ear and out the other. So you got that part of it. Then you got the part of what they have to teach in school. There's been, I know of many cases of where the teachers are buying their own supplies for their classroom, and they just, after a while, it's just like you throw up your hands because honestly, what can you do? Like there is no backing, and then you have to go and to the administration part of it where they're making a couple $100,000 a year. I mean, I've said this before just jokingly on the show, but I think they should cut all the administration's pay in half and give it to the teachers, starting with the superintendents.
Well, our school board members are some of the highest paid in the state. They make $9,000 a year.
For school board?
Yeah. But yet, that they do as little as possible. We hear more at school board meetings, guys, about how they went and reffed a basketball game or their school visits. Last election cycle, I actually told the public that if elected, I would donate my $9,000 extra income, we'd find some way to put it back into the system. By no means am I doing this for $9,000. I think I've acquired probably more gray hairs since 2018 being involved in this than I care to admit. I'm doing it because I got a passion for it. And these kids that are in our public education system today are the future of our communities. Someday they're going to be the people running for school board, city commission, county commission. They're our future leaders. So we have to do right within our public education system. They are the future, and that's why I guess I've stuck with it so long, because it's no longer about being right or uncovering dirt on this or that. It's become a passion. And I told everybody I'm not a politician. One promise I am going to make again is, if elected, I will only serve 1 4-year term. If I cannot come in on day one and get the ball rolling, at least get the conversation started, I'm not doing my job for you. So I will only seek 1 4-year term. When my 4-year term is expired, I will hopefully pass the torch, or hopefully have inspired somebody else to step up and fill my role. But I'm not going to be like a lot of board members and stick with it until I say my time has come. I will only put in 1 4-year term.
Yeah. Oh, any final questions here, Shilo? And Travis has been awful awesome with us tonight here.
Yes. I really appreciate you being with us, Travis. And obviously there's 100 topics that we could go over, but no, I really do appreciate your time.
Travis, do you have anything you want to touch on here that we haven't touched on?
Well, I guess, my words to everybody out there, even if you don't agree with me, I always want people to be involved. To me, this is more about empowering people. Whether you agree or disagree with me, let's come to the table. Let's discuss it, because with discussion, maybe bring solutions that, because a lot of us, we're strong-willed, haven't looked at. It doesn't hurt to have a civil conversation, and who knows, maybe a solution that neither side had thought of will come out of it. So I just want people to be involved. Try attending or at least watching your school board meetings. Better yet, sit down and talk to your child. One thing I think a lot of us have gone away from with the hustle and bustle of life is sitting around the dinner table and having that quality time, shutting the technology off at a certain time prior to going to bed, having those conversations about how your child's day went, how their day at school went, and basically getting back to that family dynamic.
Mm-hmm. We need a lot of that. That's for sure. Well, with that being said, Travis, again, we really do appreciate you having the time to be on with us tonight. And at any time that you want to be back on, we would definitely love that opportunity. So,
yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, guys. So
we wish you well on here.
Wishing you the best here.
You bet.
Thanks, guys.
Get out and vote. June 11th, folks. Travis is running for Bismarck Public School Board. So, all right. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
Travis Jensen running for the school board there in Bismarck. So, sounds like you guys got quite the decision to make there.
Yeah. Hey, give me half a second. I'll be right back.
Uh-oh. You never know what's going to happen here on Here's the Deal when Marvin leaves. So, no, folks, I encourage you guys a lot to just get out, get involved, get to know your candidates like Marvin was saying. Know what they stand for. Try and weed through all the garbage that you get in the mail. Don't pay attention to it. Start asking them the real questions about what their solutions are for where we're at, and make your informed decision there. It's kind of funny. I was out helping put up signs here for our district candidate that's running for state senate, and one of the guys that was helping me, he asked me to tell him who to vote for. And the other guy that we were at his yard, he's like, "Well, you just need to get informed and ask the candidates yourself on what you want to know about them, and make your own decision." And I was like, that's pretty good. Of course I was gonna say, okay, what I can tell you who I'm gonna vote for and why, but at any rate, yeah, just like Marvin was saying earlier, get out and know your candidates, ask the questions that you want to know, ask them about their solutions that they have for the issues that we're facing, because Lord knows we're facing a lot.
No, I found something over the weekend while I was looking for other things, and I don't remember where I put it. It's really interesting with Bismarck Public Schools. You look at the shifts between St. Mary's to public schools to Shilo to homeschooling. I mean, it's a pretty roundabout table. But I was kind of joking because I bumped into my algebra teacher in high school, and I went to St. Mary's, and he started at St. Mary's. I think he did 20 years at St. Mary's, and he retired at BHS. And the joke was, I'm like, how do you start a saint and end a demon? He goes, I don't know. But it's a lot of these educators from when I was in high school, young teachers that were just starting out, are still in the system. The Spanish teacher from St. Mary's, I believe, is now the principal over at Simley. Russ Reel was an amazing teacher. Like, we need to support our teachers just as much as we are supporting our school board members. We need to be involved. We need to be able to have those conversations, because if we can't come together on a conversation, we don't get anywhere.
Yeah.
I would like to see school board members, like, if Travis is elected, he's not going to sit and play the blame game. He's going to find out the answer as to how things work. And I think more of our school boards need to be that way. I think they need to, once they're in the position, don't fall into the pattern of, I can't fix anything, I can't change anything. I like Travis's philosophy of, I'm just here to start the conversation. Let's get this ball rolling. Let's look at it and see what we can do. It's about that conversation. And I mean, I've poked and prodded at Travis's over the years, just because if we don't agree with something, or if I have a question, I'll play devil's advocate with him. I do it to you all the time. You know it. So, even if you agree with somebody, sometimes even if you don't agree with somebody all the time, sometimes it's worth playing that devil's advocate and taking the other side just to see how they respond, if they're actually going to hold true in their beliefs.
Yeah.
And I mean, our elected officials, a lot of them start for the right reasons, and a lot of them started for the wrong reasons. And we're seeing the fallout from the wrong reasons. Whether it's Public Service Commission, or it's the House of Representatives, or it's school boards. One thing that I forgot to ask Travis about was, we have a tendency in Bismarck to use the emergency clause in Century Code for approving construction or repairs without actually receiving bids. And I don't know if it's gotten less over the last couple of years, but it is a problem that we see, and we see it all over the state, where they'll use the Section B of that emergency clause so that they don't have to publicly list the bids. Oh, it's declared an emergency. And we see a lot of back scratching happening behind the doors. And I think that needs to stop too. But,
oh, you mean like legislators making laws so they can actually have the bids and different things like that?
Legislators living out of district, legislators, yeah, don't even get me going on that. But we do not have enough time tonight, Shiloh. We don't.
Well, here I was trying to set you off, so I didn't have to go off. So.
Well, okay, let's look at the doctor situation.
All right. Here we go.
We'll do a 30-second analogy.
Let's go.
Doctor got found guilty, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't apply the rule to one and not apply it to all. And now they are scrambling to find a way to get themselves out of trouble. And yes, what Jason did, obviously he got found guilty of. But how many of the other legislators serve on rural cooperatives or are the heads of them where they're taking money from the state?
Mm-hmm.
How many of them have rental properties that are getting leased back to the state? How many of them have construction companies or storage companies that are doing leasing with the state?
Yep.
It's a startling amount of them that have made a lot of money off of your taxpayer dollar. And I think if we're going to do it to one, do it to all. Let's be done with it.
Yeah.
And then let's hold it to the same standard of what happened with Luke. Like, they didn't even find him guilty. They just had their kangaroo court and sent him packing. And you look at Century Code, I mean, DUI standards. You can be impeached as a statewide elected official for a DUI.
They better start impeaching then. They got a lot of impeaching to do.
And as for your legislators and stuff, they can hold each other accountable. We've already seen it once.
We did?
Well, yeah. Kangaroo court I just mentioned.
Yeah, I'm making fun of it.
Well, and the thing
That's such a bullshit deal, though. I mean, come on. I mean,
Luke wasn't actually charged with anything.
Right, and it's not because there was nothing to charge him with. There wasn't. So he was taking pictures of their voting
and putting them on Facebook. and it's the rules for the and not for me have to stop. And the elected officials sitting on multiple boards needs to stop. I mean, not to pick on one of Travis's opponents, but I'm pretty sure Danelle Preske's on like 6 or 7 or 8 different boards, including the League of Counties, including the state sheriff's department stuff. Like, she's in a bunch of stuff. So where does that leave you? I mean, Dickinson, who was that? There was a legislator that got in trouble for being on the county commission. They had how many millions of dollars sitting in their bank account?
Mm-hmm.
The double standard, the double dipping, the double everything just needs to stop. But that's just me and my 2 cents, and we all know what opinions are like.
There's a lot of things that need to stop.
Yeah.
But guess what? I learned something like 2 days ago. So I was watching this little speech that our Secretary of State was making, Michael Howe, whatever his name is.
Mike Howe, man.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter because he's lying. Anyway, he said right in the camera that the tabulators are not on the internet. Point blank. So with that statement, I wonder if he would be okay if we had a couple of those devices that Mike Lindell has going around the country. And let's just see if they really do go on the internet about 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Well, here's the other thing. Like, let's go simpler than that. We don't need a device. We don't need the other stuff. When you guys go to vote in person, open up your phone, open up your wireless settings, take a picture of the NDSOS network that's right there. It's been consistently there forever. Like, I understand they need it for their poll books and stuff, but I don't know why you'd have the network so easy for everybody to see. You'd think the IT department would know how to do a closed network on 5G, but I don't know. Oh, please.
The other thing I don't understand is beings are so secure and everything, and we're all good in North Dakota, and now that we need an ID because the legislature fixed that law the last session, now you need to have a North Dakota ID and prove you're a citizen. All right, Mitchell Howell, why can't you talk with some election officials? Why do we get locked out of your office when we show up at the Capitol? So the next time Dr. Frank's in town, I suspect that, oh, look at that. Did that just happen or what?
What? That is the North Dakota Secretary of State's page. The last 2 years, they've made their testing public ahead of time. So this year, at least they were smart enough to go pages unavailable as testing is happening. So they're checking the election equipment is what they're doing. Last 2 election cycles, they've left the results up before the election was ever up. Currently, according to the Secretary of State's office, I took a picture of it. I can stop sharing now. Just if we're going to touch on this, let's touch on it.
The other thing that I found interesting in his little speech was that you don't get an absentee ballot unless you fill out the request form. Guess what? I know of 3 people that have received them.
They've gotten them already? Well, that's fun.
Yeah. So
let me find this here quick.
This is the kind of stuff that is frustrating for me. The lies, just the cronyism. Between the cronies and then you got the phonies that you think are on your side and they're all over the place. It's frustrating. But to sit here and listen to this guy actually lie about what's going on with our elections,
So the unofficial primary results, I grabbed this last Thursday. Statewide turnout, eligible voters right now, they're forecasting us at 594,140 people out of 385 precincts. That 594, I figured it out how they come up with that number. I believe I figured it out. But what it is if you look at the national census from 2020, it shows 22.5% of North Dakota's total population is under the age of 18. So, and it actually changed the numbers from the last couple of years, but let me see where the math is here. Correct. Took total population based on census count and times 0.235. So our 2020 census was 783,926 people.
Yep.
Estimated for North Dakota based on 2023 was 779,079 for a 0.6 decrease over the last 4 years, which should put our totals right around 587,000 people that are eligible to vote. So we've gone up 20,000 from 2022, where the eligible vote count was 564,935 people and 398 eligible precincts. We're just pulling numbers out our ass at this point.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm like, I don't know, man.
It's the case for voter registration right there, Shilo.
Right. Yep. But oh no, we don't need voter registration because you know why? We have the North Dakota DOT.
Well, the Department of Vital Records. Don't forget that.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I don't get it.
All right.
But
I think
at
that's
any rate,
bling.
so what do we got going next week?
Next week's surprise guest, last I heard, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, that's right. And no, it's not me.
No, next week we got a couple legislative hopefuls that'll be joining with us.
Yeah.
We're just kind of keeping that one underneath the hat because it should be a fun conversation.
Yes, it should be. I'm looking forward to it. So,
and after that, I mean, don't forget, folks, vote early, vote often.
Oops.
No, but seriously, June 11th. I don't know what we're doing election night. I haven't decided yet. You haven't decided yet. I may just be hiding.
This might be hiding.
Like, I'm ready for a break after this primary. And I don't think we're done with the ugliness. I think it's only going to get worse over the next 2 weeks. And I could be wrong, but this is going to be.
It's going to get ugly through November.
It's going to be a bloody primary. And I think when the smoke clears, a lot of people are going to be disenfranchised after what happened.
Yeah.
But, you know, they already laid the groundwork on how to turn a red state blue 8 years ago. At least that'll be leaving for Washington, hopefully, right?
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they did that poll real quick. The poll of Burgum for vice president was 52% of North Dakotans disapprove of it, 48% approve of it. And I think you all have the same philosophy behind it, to be honest.
Yeah.
The 52% that don't want him as vice president know what he's done. The 48% that want him as vice president want him the hell out of North Dakota.
Yeah. Well, the problem is what if he does get to be the vice president?
I don't know. We hope that we have good elected officials locally that are going to take care of North Dakota instead of worry about what's going on in Washington.
Well, then, I hate to break it to you. We need to get new officials.
Yep.
99% of them ain't worth a poop. So,
well, there's
I'm not afraid to say it anymore because you know what, Marvin? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. And you know, from what I've seen the last 6 months, 8 months, however you want to say it, the guys that are trying to make a difference, hopefully you're listening to the right people. And I'm not trying to say that I'm right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, I have my flaws too. But
I'm with a microphone, so
yeah. I just I feel that some of these newer candidates, they get sidetracked with some of these talking points, and you know, even Travis kind of made a comment tonight about the proficiency scores and stuff, and I get where he's coming from. You know, I kind of got hooked up on that too when I first started, but the real thing is let's talk about why they're that way. Why are they? You know, let's talk about the real issues that we have. Why are we losing our teachers? What can we do about, you know, the unions, the teacher unions, because Lord knows they aren't helping. What about the people who are writing our curriculums and what they have to lose? What about these superintendents that think they run the shows when they really don't? I mean, and then you've got the parents being involved, keeping your kids accountable as well, because obviously that plays a part in why we're losing the teachers, right? I mean, it's all just this one big hot garbage mess, right?
Yep.
Well, I just hope that these newer candidates are listening to the people and not so much of these people that think they're grassroots and trying to steer people one way or the other. listen to your heart. Listen to the people that you're going to be serving. That's my words of wisdom, I guess, if you would say, because I don't know. It's hard to tell who's on your side sometimes. It really is.
Well, I mean, just last parting thought on it. I mean, when we joined in September, can I say I told you so?
No.
We had this conversation that was going to be ugly. We did.
Yeah.
You're like, no, it won't be that bad.
That was the positive Shilo, okay? Now this is the realist Shilo. And I mean, well, case in point, I mean, we've got people with 5 fake names, accounts on here commenting stupid shit. I mean, we got people that take our show and make videos, and I mean, it's just whatever. You're either gonna like us or you're not. If you don't like us, then don't watch us. I don't care. If the show ends today, you know what, Marvin? It's no skin off our teeth, right? We did what we thought was right, and we stood up for what we thought was right, right?
Yep. Yep.
I mean, that's all. That's all we did. I'm not gonna hang my head on anything that we've said. Has it always been truthful? I would like to think so. If there's something that we ever said that was wrong, you know, I'll apologize for it. I'll own it. I don't care. I'm human. But I'm to the point now where I don't care. If you don't like me, all right, cool. See you later. I'm to that point. I don't care. I'm not going to be in these cliques anymore. I want to be for what is right. And I've said it many, many times on this show, and people have asked me out and about, you know, it's not Democrat versus Republican anymore. It really isn't.
No.
It is good versus evil. I truly believe that. And there comes a time when you're going to have to pick. And I'm sorry. I really don't care. You can make as many stupid videos of our show as you want. It's not going to change my mind. I'm done with it. The phonies and the cronies.
Well, there's a good final parting thought, Shilo.
That is my final parting thoughts. And I know you're trying to shut me down, and I'm making it hard, but I'm
just looking at the fact it's 10 o'clock.
It is almost. All right, brother. Well, we will see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in to Here's the Deal. We got a couple legislative hopefuls for this coming week's show, so stay tuned for that. We'll be making the announcement closer to the show date. And with that, have a good week. Marv, we'll see you next week.
Yep. See you later, Shilo.
You